I welcome you back to Global Education Zone. And today, in this episode, which is the second episode for our data processing for SS2, we are going to be dealing with normalization. And when we talk about normalization, it has to do with normal forms. Now, in the previous episode, I said normalization has to do with the process by which your entries on your table was standardized, right? Now in this video I'm going to explain that in detail, the process of standardizing a table, and we'll also be talking about the three forms, the three steps of normalization and all other aspects. So stick to this video and make sure you gain as much as possible, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel in order to continue to get educational content like this. Now, when we talk about normalization, normalization has to do with the process by which data is made in such a standard and professional way. And a database management system is a collection of computer software that enables us to define, create, and maintain a database. So that's the definition we'll be going by. And then during a database um, definition, when we are trying to define a database, it involves specifying constraints for the data stored in the database, and normalization is a logical design method which minimizes redundant or duplicate data and design flaws. So normalization is kind of like that process by which we are able to restrict the the um the nature of data that is not standard. So we are trying to convert it into a standard form. It's just like when you have a data of employees payroll, and then you have some data in that table, a table of employees payroll, and then that payroll consists of the employees names, employees serial number, or any special identification. Maybe you will use the order of being accepted into the company as their identification. So it depends on what you use. So no matter what you use, now let's just assume that that data has some part of it that is redundant. So in other words, it has some parts of it that are not contributing to the essential meaning of that data, but they are still present in that data. So in this case, what we are going to do, we are going to pass through the different stages of normalization, because normalization has the first stage, it has a second stage, and has a third stage, and has subsequent stages. But in this video, we'll be dealing with only the first three stages of normalization, and those are the first normal forms, the second normal forms, and the third normal forms. Now, normal forms of relational database theory, they provide the criteria for determining a table's degree of vulnerability to the logical inconsistencies and anomalies. Now, what this means is that normal forms are kind of like the setup, is the process that helps the table to be less vulnerable to inconsistencies and all these things that makes data to be less desirable and less standard. Now, the first normal forms, which is the first one I'm dealing with today, it says that all column values must be atomic. So what this means is that for every row by column position in a given table, there exists only one value, not an array or a list of value. So that means there's only one value for a particular column, column by row, or cell in a table. So basically, the way of observing first normal form is by eliminating repeating information, and you can also create separate tables for related data. Now I will show you a diagram on the screen that demonstrates how first normal forms is carried out. So if you think about the flat relational table design with many repeated sets of data for the students and courses, so on the screen now is a table that shows the relationship between students and data, and you can identify two distinct topics, which are students and courses. So now, as you can see this table, now this table on the screen, now this table consists of two different tables, and they are connected by a relationship. Now this is related to what we call an ERD, which is an entity relationship model. Now this kind of table here, it kind of shows us the relationship between the different tables that make up a database. Now when we have this kind of database, these tables that are connected, they have a relationship between them, and they satisfy not first normal form, because in this case we have eliminated a repeating information. So it's just like you are separating your table into two tables that are different but they are related. So that is what first normal form of normalization actually means, and it is actually very easy to understand once you grasp the concept of normalization. So in this table you can see that first we have student ID card, student's name, and address. Now this is basically a table that is relating the student data with the course data. Now, assuming you were a university lecturer or a facilitator who teaches a subject, and then you basically suddenly feel the need to have a database that tells you all the information you need to know about your students. Now, you'd always want to keep a database, and you'd probably use Microsoft Access. So now in Microsoft Access, there's this feature that helps us to relate these tables to one another. Now, the reason why I'm not demonstrating all this now is because of the fact that I don't have a Microsoft Access subscription right now. But as soon as I do, I will demonstrate all these database and concepts live for you. But this is just a video to explain the concept in theory. But then we'll go practical as soon as I can. Now, basically, when you have these two tables on, like on the screen right now, there's a relationship between them, and the reason why we don't have them as one table is because when we decide to do that, there will be some data that will be redundant. So when you're having student ID, you can see that in these two tables you have student ID and you still have student ID. So the first is the student table and the second is the student course table. Now these tables are connected by this arrow. You can see this arrow that connecting them is called a one-to-many relationship. Now this is a kind of diagram to represent the kind of relationship between database tables. Now, but what I'm trying to say is that these tables, they satisfy first normal forms, because now when you have student ID in one and the second, you don't have it repeated in that one, so they have been separated, and then that student ID is kind of like the bond they share. Is a special kind of relationship known as a primary key to foreign key. So we'll talk about the foreign key in another aspect of this video. But these tables, they have now been first normal form normalized. Now this first normal form is not the only one. We also have the second normal form. Now when we talk about the second normal form, it is it states that we must remove subsets of data that apply to multiple rows of a table and place them in separate table. So now, and next, you must create relationships. So now you look at this table of data of an employee. Now this is an employee who keeps the different kind of data, like the customer number, the first name, the last name, address, city, state, zip, phone, and email. Now this column of data, it represents the kind of data that most employees would like to keep, or most salesmen would try to keep of their customers. Now this kind of table, it's not second normalized, because we still have some subset of data that are not that are related, but they are not completely related to the data. So in this case, we have to separate them into another table. So we'll talk about the process of separating them. And after separating them, you must create a relationship between these new tables and their predecessors. And the instrument used to create relationship between tables is called a foreign key. Now this table, this field, not all of them are really dependent. So in this case, you can see this company that maintains a customer information on a database, you can see that the single table, which assuming this table is called the customers table, there are some elements like the zip, the phone number, and email, which are not totally related, because a zip should be on a new table, and then the customer table should be separate from the zip table. So and then you can now connect those two. So as you can see now, we've separated the table. There's a new table on the screen. Now this table, let's call it the zip table. This zip table, it has the zip field, the zip row, the city row, and the state row. Now these three, they are associated with the zip information of that customer. So now we have separated them, and the next step now is to connect them with a foreign key. Now you can see there's a connection between the two of this table. Now this connection is kind of called the foreign key. And when we talk about the foreign key, is a kind of connection that connects a table with another table, with when they have a kind of similar relationship and similar field. That similar field is called the foreign key, and I will explain the foreign key subsequently in this video. Now let's move on to the next part. Now the new customers table is we have a new table now. The new customer table has now been reduced into a smaller size, where you have only the related information like the customer's number, the first name, the address, the zip, the phone, and the email. So that zip, the reason why the zip is still there is because it's going to be like it is the candidate key of the first table, which is now serving as the foreign key of the second table. So on the screen now, you can see the new table, and this table is kind of like the one that demonstrates when we have second normalized the table, the data in the table. So in summary, these second normal forms basically it takes the data that has been first normal form normalized, then it kind of separates the data from all those aspects of it that are not fully dependent on the primary aspects of data. So and then it kind of creates that alternate concept, and then it relates the first and the last with a relationship. Now next, let's talk about another concept, which is third normal forms. I want to talk about third normal forms. Third normal forms, there are two basic requirements for a table to be in third normal forms. First, it must have satisfied the requirements of both first and second normal forms. And then secondly, you must remove the columns that are not fully dependent upon the primary key. Now this example, you can see a table on the screen. Now in this table on the screen, we have some aspects of it that are not fully independent, like the order number, cost number, unit price, quantity, and total. They are dependent, but every other thing is not dependent, so it has been scrapped out. So when we talk about foreign key, now before we end this video, I want to explain the concept of foreign key in satisfactory detail. Now you can see two tables on the screen, and they are related by a connection. Now these two tables, they are kind of like a table and another table connected by a kind of relationship that is it's a one-to-many, just like the table we introduced earlier. Now this connection is made by the use of a foreign key, and that foreign key is a field in a relational table that matches a candidate key of another table. So in this second table, in the lower table, you can see that this smaller table has a particular a property, which is the student ID. Now that student ID in the new table, it is a foreign key because it matches the primary key of the first table, and that primary key is also the candidate key, and the candidate key is a key that could have been the primary key. So it is a possible primary key of the entry of a table. Now, as I suppose we've explained enough on this topic, so these are questions on the screen for you to attempt. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next episode.